This is AIM Agenda. With me this morning, Labor MP Peter Khalil, Liberal MP Tim Wilson. Gentlemen, good morning. Peter, first to you, it looks like a real difference in emphasis to me between what Richard Marles is saying this morning and that argument made by Penny Wong this morning in the Fairfax Press. Is that a fair assessment, that there are differences of opinion within Labor right now as to how to handle the US?
No, I don't think so, Kieran. And I know the media loves trying to find conflict where there is none and sort of jumping at shadows. But the fact is, Penny has said very, very clearly that the US alliance is something that endures beyond any one individual or any particular administration. And it does, because we have shared values, democracy and human rights and all of the things that we share in common interests with the US that have endured for decades. And I believe that relationship will endure past any particular administration or Mr. Trump. And when we're talking about the US alliance, we can walk and chew gum at the same time. I think that's the best way to put it. We can maintain our very strong security and strategic alliance with the US and ensure that we have strong economic relationships across the Asia-Pacific region, particularly with China, but also with India and Japan and many other countries. I don't think we have to have that false dichotomy of choosing, and this is something that we do because it's in the national interest, and that's what Penny and Richard have been talking about.
That might be the view that the media try and highlight differences. What I'm trying to argue this morning is, or explain, is that I thought there is a difference of emphasis between Mr. Marles and Penny Wong. Tim Wilson, your thoughts on it?
Well, of course there's a difference, but there's a difference within the Labor Party on the issue of the US alliance and Trumpism generally. What you've seen is, obviously, since the Trump election, the Labor Party running around desperately trying to say that we don't like Donald Trump because they think that works for their inner-city lefty base that people like Peter Khalil try and appeal to in the desperate hope to hold back the green tide that will consume him at the next election, while at the same time trying to have a conversation with ordinary Australians who actually understand that this relationship is incredibly important to Australia's economic as well as global security. And so there is a massive division, but it's not as though it's something particularly being highlighted now. This is the division of a Labor Party that doesn't know what it stands for, where it's going, or what it wants to do for Australia.
What about the argument, the substance here, Peter, in relation to what Penny Wong, Hugh White, Paul Keating have all argued, and that is for a more robust independence, I think, within the alliance, and that is to engage more proactively with not just Beijing, but Tokyo, Jakarta and elsewhere in our region. Do you think that there is merit in that point?
Once again, I think people are misunderstanding that this is a false dichotomy. Trying to say that you have to choose either or is not in fact how international relations works. Australian Labor has always talked about putting the national Australian interests first. We have to do that. That's our job, to ensure that we get the best results for Australia. We're a trading nation, we're a middle power, we're engaged in the international community, we have a strong relationship with the US that has endured over many, many decades, one that has had bipartisan support, but certainly forged in the darkest days of World War II through Prime Minister Curtin, a Labor Prime Minister with the US President Roosevelt. These are things that have endured. You don't have to make those false choices, and I think Tim is sort of jumping at shadows there by making some sort of assumption that there are divisions. It's not the case. We are committed to Australia's national interest first.
Well, there's a point that's been made in recent days by both sides of politics, Tim Wilson, and I'm just not sure I buy it so much. And this is the point, that the alliance is bigger than any individual. Well, if that's the case, it's not much bigger than the President of the United States. That's what a lot of Australians, I think, now have question marks over. What does the foreign policy of the Trump administration mean? And should we be saying, like Mr. Marles said this morning, that the more America in the region, the better? We don't know what Trump's going to bring to the region.
Well, it's evolving, as Julie Bishop, the Foreign Minister, said. I mean, I don't think anybody should be jumping to conclusions about what will actually happen under a Trump administration. Frankly, I don't think we know, which is why Penny Wong's leap out there today in saying maybe we need to scale back the relationship is actually quite irresponsible, when you should actually look in a calm and measured way, as the government is now doing. And just to pick up on a point that Peter raised before, it's not absurd to highlight the fact that there is clearly a deep division within Labor about whether it should be a modern cultural progressive party that runs around playing identity politics, or whether it should be a party which it used to be, it once was, which actually spoke about Australia's national interest and defended the Australian way of life, which it's no longer prepared to do. And this is one of the fundamental problems that Bill Shorten is now facing, where he's not sure whether he's in favour of the closure of Hazelwood in Victoria or whether he's opposed to it because he actually supports cheap energy prices because that'll keep people in jobs. Go back to the last election. The only people talking about jobs was the Liberal National Coalition.
Before
Peter,
you
we've
start
only got
jumping
about a minute left. I want to ask you about the defence spend. Giuliani making hawkish statements overnight, pushing ahead with this multi-billion or hundreds of billions of dollars in additional defence spend. Are you encouraged by that from the US, given your and the Labor Party view that there should be more America in the Asia-Pacific, not less?
Well, just on that point about that, what Richard and Penny have both argued, there's 2 points. The first is, yes, we always are trying to influence the US to make sure that they maintain their engagement in the Asia-Pacific, because that's to our benefit and I think to the overall benefit of the region, and that's certainly something that we encourage, and I hope that Tim would as well. On the point, though, that Penny made and we've all made and Bill Shorten made, he got it absolutely right. The US relationship is one that endures, but when we see sexism, when we see racism, when we see religious intolerance, making fun of disabled people, we will call it out, because the US deserves an ally that it needs, not that one that it just wants.
Tim Wilson, your thoughts on that? That's a fair point. Just 30 seconds left.
I'm not disputing that we'll have differences of opinion with the United States, but I don't think we should be rushing to judgment as Penny Wong is, where she's going out and, proclaiming foreign policy when she doesn't actually know what she's talking about. I read her article today. It was vague. It didn't really say anything of substance except to the people that Peter's trying to appeal to in his inner city seat, which is that we're not a solely owned subsidiary of the United States and we sign up to identity politics too. When it comes down to it, we will achieve peace through strength, and we need a strong America, we need its influence in the region, but we have to work in partnership. That's the bedrock of the alliance. That's why we, the coalition, support it.
We've got to go to a break and wrap up our conversation. Tim, Peter, appreciate it. We'll talk to you soon.